Right, here we are for part 2 with the Snell J2s. As you saw in the last video, we built a crossover, measured them, did the best job we could, and I've since gone back and tweaked it slightly, and it's worked out pretty well. It's been difficult because this tweeter really doesn't want to play down lower than 3 kilohertz, 2,500. And this woofer, once it gets up to about 2,500 hertz, it gets a bit crazy. So the original tweeter would have probably played down to that quite comfortably, because it was larger, and I think that's kind of what they did without having an accurate schematic of what they originally did. But yeah, I've brought this up probably to about 3,000 hertz, maybe a little bit more, to meet up with this, and it's been tricky, and I've tried to do it without going over a second order crossover. I almost did go to a third on the tweeter so I could get it to play lower, but then really cut it off hard, so we wouldn't damage it. But I just couldn't get that to work with this. They need a smoother blending. But yeah, I think we're about there. So hopefully we'll put that crossover together and it will turn out pretty well. Measures fairly well. I think we've got it to a difference of about 4 dB from 200 hertz up to 10 kilohertz, which is pretty good. This does have a bit of a humped response from let's say 1,000 hertz to about 2.5. It lumps up a little bit, a few dB. It could almost do with like a notch filter to pull that down. I really don't want to do that. I try and avoid it really, but yeah, I think we're ready to put the network together and then yeah, test it again and then just have a listen to it. I mean, it's all about how this sounds. A flat frequency response is kind of what you aim for really when you do your crossovers and stuff, but that can sound pretty lifeless and dull. So sometimes, you know, a bit of magic in there can be good. So yeah, the proof's in the listening. There's a lot of music that I like to listen to just to sound out speakers, and sometimes off the back of that I make a few adjustments, you know, like if the tweeter's playing a bit too loud or we're a bit bright in certain areas, then adjustments can be made based on these, which are the best measuring devices you can have. So yeah, we'll put the network together and do that now. Right, I've loosened off the woofer, and these are the components we're going to use. So I've got a air core inductor, so we're not using iron core on the woofer because these are playing up fairly high, so I want these to have the best chance they can. So 1.1 millihenry air core inductor, and then a 10 microfarad cap on the woofer as well, so a second order. Then on the tweeter, and this is where I've made a few changes. Originally I was 0.24 millihenry on the inductor and 8 microfarad on the tweeter, which was just allowing the tweeter to play too low. So I'm going with a poly cap of 4.7 microfarad, and then again an air core inductor, something really good, 3.3 millihenry, sorry, 0.33 millihenry. So good parts to give these a good chance. So let's take this out. Okay, we're going to go a bit wobbly here. Really what I want to do is cut a nice piece of plastic or a thin piece of MDF and make a square to go over these binding posts. So I can build the crossover on there and then nut and bolt it down. But whoever's mucked around with these has soldered directly onto the binding posts. So that means all the threads are full of solder and we can't take them off. So what I'm going to have to do is build the woofer circuit separately and cut into these. And because we can't take the tweeter out, we can't solder new cables on the back. So I'm going to have to cut into these and build it separately as well. So yeah, this speaker is just fighting all the way. We've got this egg crate foam in there, which is pretty good, and I've ordered some more of this because I want to lay a sheet of it around the back as well. We're not putting this angel hair back in there because that's going to fly all over the place in and out of the port as it goes. So yeah, not great. So this is the positive of the tweeter. And because I can't see behind it, I'm assuming that's where it goes. We need to connect this out of phase, so I must remember that. So this would be the negative to the tweeter. Yeah, so I'm doing quite a bit of this at the moment. Since lockdown, my work with speakers has really increased, and I love doing it. I quite enjoy making these videos. Hopefully you're finding them interesting. Yeah, it's all good fun. So the inductors have screw holes through them, so I'm going to screw these in place and kind of use that to hold everything in the back, because I can put a wood screw through here into the wood at the back and then mount the capacitor on there as well. And also I can keep the inductor for the woofer quite a distance away as well. This is definitely not going to be easy because I'm trying to do everything through the hole here. Some of it I'll be able to put together above, but yeah, it's going to be a bit tricky. So I would have liked to have built this on a board and then put that board over the binding posts, but yeah, can't do that. Right, back to wobbly cam to have a look in here. So the inductor screwed to the board at the back, the capacitor's on top of it, and everything's soldered in. So yeah, it's not the neatest thing at the moment, but I will tidy up and probably sleeve up some of those connections. But yeah, that's in the absence of being able to take the tweeter out and build a board. This is what we can do. I mean, it's good in some ways. It's point-to-point connections, no circuit board or anything. So yeah, fingers crossed we'll be good. Right, so the woofer is going to be a bit easier because this time I've got the leads and I can solder it all up here and then just screw the whole thing in. I can solder on some new cable onto the driver. So yeah, this shouldn't be as difficult, he says. Right, this time, because we can do this out of the cabinet, we can put some heat shrink sleeving on here. So we can really neaten this up. So positive straight into the inductor. Good. We can have a bit of heat shrink over that then. Alright, need to get some cables. So I've got some pretty decent oxygen-free cable, QED, which I use. So that's what I'm going to use on this. This is the foam I'm going to be using inside, because there's only a few bits of foam in there. So yeah, just quickly grabbed that from inside, so I thought I'd show you. Right, so that's more like what I'm trying to achieve on the crossover, because I can't put it on a board. So positive in, through our inductor, out to the positive of the woofer, and then our capacitor down to ground, and our ground for the woofer. So second order. So yeah, that's what I would do if I could do this out of the speaker. Pretty cool. Right, so there we go. I've cable tied it together. And what I'll probably do is put a little bit of hot glue on these capacitors so they don't rattle around in there. But I mean, you can see they're held on there really tight. So yeah, pretty good. Right, let's put this in. So what I'm going to do is use a bit of hot glue just to stop those capacitors rattling around. Not that they will, but then I think this one's done. Yeah, and then I just need to fit the foam, cut that to size, get that over the base port, take out this other stuff which is pretty contaminated with this angel hair stuff, so just treat it to new foam. Yeah, and then it's kind of done. This stuff's really thin. Yeah, really thin. Right, I'll bring you in to have a look at this. Right, okay, so in there we now have our woofer filter and our tweeter filter. I've glued the caps down so no vibrations from them. Like I say, the tweeter circuit, it's all soldered up nicely, but I really wish I could do that out of the box, because you can see how much neater the woofer one is. It's not going to affect how it sounds, but Yeah, one of those things, but there we go. Right, took a bit to get it in there, but we now have lovely foam all the way around. We've got a piece at the top. You can't see it in there, but there's a piece at the bottom, and yeah, we're all nice sound deadening in there. That's gonna cover up our crossover, which it has. Yeah, and she's going to sound good. Quite a nice dead cabinet now. Yeah, so all that's left to do is to solder her back on the woofer, and this one's done. Before I do the other one, I will give this a quick measure up and just make sure that we are all good, because I don't want to do both of them and find out there's a problem with them both. So yeah, it's looking good. Right, I'm on the second one now, and I found something odd with the first one I did. Didn't register at first, but the woofer was connected out of phase, reverse polarity. And I'm now working on the second one, and this is the positive lead to the top binding post for the woofer. If you follow it through, we are on the positive. So one woofer was playing out of phase to the other. How that's never been noticed listening to these, I don't know. They must have had a serious lack of bass, because the two would have cancelled each other out to a degree. So yeah, it's odd. I've just reassembled the other one and just took it into the office to measure it. And now the woofer's playing in phase. It's improved it more against what I had before, because unknowingly I was doing those measuring with the woofer out of phase. So I thought I might have to swap the tweeter back round, but no, it's worked out pretty well. So I'm going to get this one back together, stick them on stands, and have a good listen. Right, so I've managed to do the tweeter circuit on this speaker. I've done it a little bit differently to the other one, and I will go back and tidy up the other one, I think. So what I've done, I've put some leads on here which I'm going to get onto those binding posts. I'll just heat the hell out of them until I can solder them. So we come in our positive through our capacitor out to our negative of our tweeter, our ground to our positive of the tweeter because we're out of phase, and our inductor across the output of the capacitor and ground, second order. So that's really good, a lot neater. I've put heat shrink on it as well, so I can close that up. Right, so this one is done now as well. So we're in our positive through our capacitor out to the negative of our tweeter, back on the negative of the tweeter to the negative post, and our inductor is across the output of the capacitor and ground. And then on the woofer, you come into our inductor, pick up the positive to the woofer and the cap down to ground of the speaker, ground of the binding post. So yeah, that's all back together. So I'm going to get some foam in there now and put the woofer back in. Okay, so having been listening to these for a little bit, the upper mid-range and tweeter, there was just a bright spot there, so I've had to make the tweeter a third order, and I think that's going to do the trick. So you can see there I've added in an 8 microfarad capacitor, which has turned us from a second order on the tweeter to a third order. So that will bring the level down of that, but also make it roll off steeper, so it shouldn't blend so much with the woofer. So that's what I'm hoping, and yeah, otherwise this one's done. Well, I've finished mucking around with these now, and I've spent a good hour listening to them, and they're pretty good. They're pretty good. I don't know if I'm going to get them much better, because I'm really struggling to get the woofer to play up high enough to meet the little tweeter that's been put in these. I think originally the larger tweeter probably played down to 2,500, maybe 2,000 hertz, and the Sears tweeter that's in there now just won't play down that low. It's much smaller. It's only a little 3/4 of an inch dome, and you've got a big 8-inch woofer, and trying to marry the two up is quite tricky. But I think I found a good compromise. The woofer's playing higher than it really can do, and it makes it on certain songs a little bit shouty, but it's doing a lot of things really well, and I'm enjoying listening to them. So yeah, I think they're there. So we've ended up with a third order crossover on the tweeter and a second on the woofer. I've used air core inductors on both the tweeter and the woofer, and some good capacitors as well, polycaps on the tweeter. And yeah, I think considering what we started with and the difficulties with the tweeter, which really doesn't particularly work well with these, I think we've ended up with something pretty good. So yeah, I will continue to listen for a bit longer. I don't think I'm going to tweak them anymore. So yeah, I think we're going to have to call these done. So hope that's been interesting. Sorry it's been a bit long-winded, and thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.